How's it going, Yankee fans? Welcome back to Baby Bombers Podcast, the inaugural episode of the Baby Bombers Podcast, where we are only talking about the Yankees' future, their prospects, young talent, and guys with substantial upside, guys we may see in the majors very, very soon. So if you're interested in Yankee prospects, this is where you're going to want to be. This is where you're going to find out all about these players, what their upside is. We're going to be going to spring training this year. We have a lot of different ideas for what we're going to do here, try to get as many prospects on the channel as possible. As you know, we did interview Will Warren last week on the Fireside Yankees channel, so it's all going to be connected. We wanted to make something centric for you guys. You'd come to learn more about the youngsters on this team and start to dive into, the substantial upside that some of these players have. And some of these guys were non-roster invites to the Yankee spring training in a couple days here. So we're excited to discuss the guys that really have the potential to make an impact in the future, maybe even in 2024. Obviously, there's big names there like Spencer Jones, Chase Hampton, Will Warren. We're really, really big on Ben Rice. We're going to discuss all of them in this episode and what to watch during spring training as we get closer. Ryan, before we dive into the good stuff, how you do today, my friend?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to get this podcast off the ground and get started talking about these prospects. The Yankees have an extremely exciting class of prospects on the way. They have an extremely exciting class of prospects that are going to be playing in spring training this year. Obviously, the biggest name, literally, is Spencer Jones. He is the Yankees' top prospect entering this spring training camp. I know Jason Dominguez is their number one prospect, but obviously, due to injuries, he won't be featured in spring training, or at least that's what we've been led to believe. I know the communication there has been a little bit spotty in terms of whether we're going to see Jason Dominguez early on, when we're going to see him. Is it going to be a summer thing? Who knows? But when it pertains to Spencer Jones, this guy is a physical specimen, right? This guy is absolutely remarkable. He is a unique combination of power and speed. It's rare that we see guys at his size move the way he does. And usually when they do, you say, oh, well, they're frail or they're too skinny for their position or for their size or whatever it may be. This guy, Spencer Jones, if you think Spencer Jones doesn't have enough oomph to his frame, you're not watching the same guy, because this guy can destroy the baseball. He led minor league baseball in average exit velocity last season, according to Baseball America, and obviously he's the guy that we're going to keep the most tabs on. But there are plenty of really exciting young players. Chase Hampton is another guy who was a mainstay top 100 guy, also drafted in the 2022 draft class alongside Spencer Jones. He has a really exciting arsenal: fastball, cutter, sweeper, curveball. Those four pitches really blend well, and they work to lefties and righties. Command is something he was able to work on as he refined his mechanics throughout the season. And as the Yankees have gotten him to be a little more aggressive in his secondary pitch usage, the Yankees tried to get him to throw more sliders, more cutters, more curveballs in Double-A. Not to say that he shouldn't throw his fastball, but just to get more comfort, mixing in those pitches. Because, and we've talked about this before, when it comes to starting pitchers, your ability to mix things up and diversify your arsenal is extremely important to your ability to get through a lineup two times or three times or whatever it may be. And, Chase Hampton is a really talented pitcher. I really have a lot of high hopes for him. But the guy that I think we all kind of anticipate will get reps this year is Will Warren. He spent a good chunk of the year in AAA. There was a lot of excitement around him. Sinker sweeper guy, the Matt Blake specialty, has a cutter, developed his four-seam fastball, has a solid feel of his changeup. That's 5 quality pitches. That alone makes you a pretty solid pitcher in terms of projections. But when you add the fact that his sweeper has a 160 stuff plus and his sinker has a 130 stuff plus, suddenly you say, all right, he has 2 elite pitches, maybe an 80 grade sweeper, maybe around a 65 grade sinker, and then he's got 3 other pitches to boot that help him against left-handed batters. It's kind of hard to argue that that's not a really good pitching prospect. I think he should be in consideration for more top 100 lists. I think Baseball America did a really good job explaining why they considered him, even though they left him off. Kylie McDaniel of ESPN put him on their top 100 list. And then, the guy that I think is going to, this might be a hot take, but I think the guy who's going to get the most major league looks is Ben Rice. He's a first baseman and catcher. I think we're at the point where he's probably not going to catch the major league level. We have Augustin Ramirez on the 40-man roster. You have Austin Wells, your starting catcher. You have Jose Trevino under contract for the next 2 years. I imagine Rice is going to end up sliding to first base at some point. But Alex, he just profiles so well for Yankee Stadium. He's already torn up Double-A. Projections really like him. Zips believes he'll be a 108 WRC plus hitter, and that's without any experience at Triple-A, and that's their median projection. So Zips, when you're looking at median projections, that's their most likely outcome, right? That's not taking into consideration their upside Also, their floor. He is a prospect. There is a pretty low floor there, right? Like, there's a chance he's just not a major league caliber player, but there's also that chance that he is the next legit left-handed hitter the Yankees develop. And this crop of left-handed hitting prospects the Yankees have, we saw Dominguez, who's a switch hitter, Jones, we just talked about, Rice. They have a bevy of really quality left-handed hitters are going to be coming up through the system over the next year and a half. And Alex, looking at this team, left-handed hitters is exactly what this ballpark is built for.
That's exactly right, and that's why the Yankees front office has been pretty diligent and pretty refusing to trade some of these high quality prospects like Spencer Jones, like Jason Dominguez, like Ben Rice. I mean, Ben Rice is a pretty decent trade piece in my opinion. If they were going to try to leverage a lefty bat with catcher experience and first base upside, that's the guy I'd be looking at. Now, a lot of people think Spencer Jones is going to, for some reason, transition to first base. Let me just quell that now. Spencer Jones is a freak athlete at 6'6", guys. There's no way the Yankees are going to stick him at first base. In fact, I would say right now there's more of a probability of him playing center field than Jason Dominguez, based on the fact that he has a really, really good arm, former pitcher, and obviously has the speed and athleticism. A lot of people think that Dominguez is going to eventually level out in terms of his athletic profile. He's only 20 years old, but he's a bigger dude. He's muscular, Spencer Jones is taller, faster to a degree, and, can cover more ground much more quickly. So a lot of people do say that Spencer Jones does actually profile much better for center field. But, when looking at spring training specifically, the importance of guys like Jones getting experience against high-level talent, guys that are in the MLB or at the AAA level, is imperative to his growth this upcoming season. Why? Because Jones struggled in a couple of areas last year, right? He did not make enough quality contact, hit too many ground balls. Like, there are things that he needs to improve upon. This year, he's been working actually with Tony Kemp at Vanderbilt. So what is Spencer Jones going to do to try to elevate his numbers? Well, improve his swing path, a little bit more elevation on it, better launch angle. Because you look at a player with this type of hard hitter, this type of slugging prowess, if you get the ball in the air, you're going to see a lot more home runs, right? Like, theoretically speaking, more fly balls will equal more home runs with this level of power. So Jones is going to try to do those things. He only hit like 13 homers, I think, last year, over 100 games in high A Hudson Valley, was it? And then he went to Double A and struggled a bit. So, I do think that we have not even seen close to the level of dominance that Spencer Jones can put together. He's been trying to work through some of these struggles, some of these inconsistencies, but if he improves his eye, and he's been working diligently to do that, if he gets a little bit better with his patience, picks the right pitches, makes better contact, and produces more fly balls, you're going to see a higher walk rate, a lower strikeout rate, and more home runs. Those three variables are going to lead to Spencer Jones being a very good player in the future because he stole 43 bases between two minor league teams last year. He can do it at a high level. And guys, one thing I know for a fact, the Yankees struggle with their athleticism because they have older players. You're not asking Judge to steal that many bases. You're not asking Rizzo or DJ LeMahieu. These guys are not going to be stealing bags like that, or Juan Soto for what it's worth. So I'm looking more to these younger, faster, more athletic guys. Jones, Anthony Volpe, Peraza, even Glaber was pretty solid last year, stealing some bags. And I feel like those are the guys that I'm looking. Even Dominguez can steal a couple every now and then. So, I do feel as though the Yankees do have a good little mix of players coming up and can make an impact on the bases. So, when it comes to Ben Rice, I'll talk about him for a second. I think we're going to see Ben Rice make that transition to AAA at some point as a first baseman. I don't think that he's going to last long at catcher. Why? Austin Wells and Jose Cervinho are enough of a logic there, justification to move Ben Rice full-time to first base. Ben Rice is never going to play catcher at the MLB level for the Yankees. Maybe another team if he gets moved. But the Yankees have their guy. Austin Wells is a very solid catcher with a lot of upside they haven't even cracked yet. We've spoken to multiple people, including John Flaherty, who said he's able to command the pitching room. We talked to Will Warren, who said this guy knows what a pitcher needs. He knows how they tick. Everyone is speaking extremely high in terms of what Austin Wells' potential is here. And then you got Trevino, who's arguably the best defensive catcher in the game. So why do you need Ben Rice at catcher? There's no reason. You also had the minor league level, by the way, Carlos Narvaez and Agustin Ramirez, who a lot of people are saying could be a really freaking special player. And we'll talk about him in another episode in a full breakdown. But Ben Rice should be transitioning full-time to first base. What are your thoughts about that? I'd love to get some reps for him at first base during spring training.
Yeah, so first and foremost, you mentioned Agustin Ramirez, and I find that really interesting because, he's on the 40-man roster, so technically speaking, we're going to be seeing him in spring training, and that takes away reps from Ben Rice, right? Carlos Narvaez, Augustin Ramirez, Austin Wells, Ben Rortvedt's still on the team, so you can't just not play him. You can't say, well, we're going to think about trading you, we won't play you during the spring, and you have Jose Trevino. That's 5 different catchers on top of anybody else in the minor league level that is, a non-roster invite. Josh Breaux, I believe, was also invited to camp. That they're going to have to get a lot of reps in at catcher, and I don't think Ben Rice is a guy that, as you mentioned, is just going to stick at that position. And that's fine, right? Like, I think part of it is they just want to get his bat to the major league level. I think if they wanted to take a year or two to get his catching to where it needs to be, like, I don't think he's a terrible defender. I just think it from the Yankees' perspective, it's, we don't want to wait till you're 27 to see you. We need to see you as soon as possible. There's a reason why Austin Wells took a really long time to get through the minor leagues, despite the fact he was crushing everybody, and that was the defense. The Yankees wanted to make sure that was down-packed. They did not want to play Austin Wells at first base. They did not want to play Austin Wells in left field. They never even experimented with it in the minor leagues. So I think that tells you they want him to be a catcher. He wants to be a catcher. But Ben Rice is a guy that's certainly a candidate to transition to first base. And that bat is just so enticing. An extremely unique profile in the sense that he has great game power, great raw power, really good contact skills, makes really patient swing decisions. He's not the type of guy who's going to go up there and just hack at everything. He's going to be patient. He's going to see the ball to the plate. And he's still able to pull the ball in the air. And that's so impressive. It takes a really good feel for the strike zone. And I know people are going to point out, well, he's 24. Of course he destroyed Double-A. The guy didn't play 2 straight years of affiliated college baseball because the Ivy League schools canceled in 2020 and in 2021 as well. And he was drafted in 2021. So he had to play in a different league. And I'm not trying to demean, the leagues he played in at the college level, but they're not going to have NCAA talent because the NCAA, they're playing their league. So it's not like he was playing in a circuit full of, guys that were going in the first round and guys that are going in the second round. Hell, guys aren't even getting drafted in the first place. Ben Rice was a 12th round pick, and he was probably the best player in that crop of players in that league. So it is interesting that people kind of ignore the lack of reps he has. He has 163 total professional games. This is a guy who's still developing, right? And once he gets to the major league level, I'm sure that we're going to see him click. And looking at some of the rest of these NRIs and some of the other guys you can see stand out, I don't know if he's going to become a notable prospect at any point, but TJ Rumfield was a little bit interesting in the sense of he increased his fly ball rate, he increased his home run total. He had 4 minor league home runs in his entire career, and he had played about 100 minor league games, and this year in 82 minor league games, he hit 17. So this is a tall guy. I've seen him in person. He is huge. This is a burly man. I'm not saying he's like large in the bad way. I mean more so he's a tall guy. There's a lot of muscle there. He can certainly get the ball in the air and hit the ball hard. We'll wait and see if maybe he takes a step forward this year. He is entering his age 24 season, so kind of where Ben Rice was in his career, except he does have a little more established success at Double-A. And then another guy I wanted to talk about is Caleb Durbin. Now, Caleb Durbin, he's a guy that I think people need to pay attention to more. He really developed his game power a little bit more at the Yankees. He looked excellent in the Arizona Fall League. Dude, he was remarkable down there. And if you look at his second half numbers, he had an isolated power above 180. If you guys aren't aware what isolated power is, that's simply slugging percentage, and then you just subtract batting average from it. If it's at 180 or above, you have above average game power. Caleb Durbin's 5'6". Nobody projected this guy to have above average game power or close to average game power. The big thing with him was that he had no game power. So people were like, this guy's not going to be a major league caliber player. Well, I can tell you from just interviewing him, the guy's huge. The guy has muscle. He's extremely fast. He's versatile. He hinted at maybe playing the outfield a little bit. That'll be something to look at. So, there are a lot of really interesting players entering camp for the Yankees. The depth of this organization is something that we're really going to be able to talk about in the coming weeks. Like, Ben Rice isn't a consensus top 10 prospect in the organization. I think Baseball America, or no, not even Baseball America, I think Baseball Prospectus was the only outlet to include Ben Rice in the Yankees' top 10. That's not saying Ben Rice definitely isn't, but it isn't a consensus opinion. And that's not because he's not good. It's because there are a lot of really talented players. Caleb Durbin, a guy who absolutely destroyed Double-A in the Arizona Fall League, isn't a top 30 prospect in any outlet, if I'm not mistaken. We talk about, guys like Will Warren, who isn't the team's best pitching prospect. Hell, you could argue the team has 2 better pitching prospects than him, one of them being Chase Hampton, another being Henry Lane, who we won't see him in spring training for a couple of years. He is still very, very young. But the really big takeaway here is there are a lot of exciting players to watch this year in spring training on the prospect side of things. And Alex, I know you and I will be talking about these guys plenty. I know that if you guys want to hear more conversations about this, this is the podcast to do it on. Like, I'm really excited to get this thing going, and I know spring training's gonna be plenty of fun to continue this prospect conversation.
It absolutely is. And I'm glad you brought up Caleb Durbin, because this is a guy that you've interviewed in the past. And, this is a pretty interesting player, guys. Caleb Durbin, he's 5'6". He gives you like Altuve vibes. And of course, he's not Jose Altuve, but, Caleb Durbin, guys, 4.6% strikeout rate last year in AA across 47 games. A 4.6% strikeout rate is stupendous. You don't find players with that type of, because his strike zone is so small, he's able to manipulate it at his will, basically. Yes, his walk rate is nothing special. Obviously, it was 6.2%, but in high A Hudson Valley, he had a 9.3% strikeout rate and a 14.4% walk rate over 22 games. His on-base percentages are great. His batting averages are great. His slugging percentages are solid. He's been above average at every level, and he's 23 years old. So this is his time to shine. Like, I think next year, this upcoming Rule 5 draft in December 2024, he's Rule 5 eligible. So the Yankees have to make a decision. Are they going to protect him? Are they going to trade him? Or are they going to consider him as an actual asset on this team? So here's my hot prospect take right now. Don't sleep on Caleb Durbin potentially competing for that second base job if Gleyber Torres leaves. If the Yankees do not bring back Gleyber Torres, don't sleep on Caleb Durbin potentially being an option there, getting a chance to compete. You know what I mean? Like, it's possible. If he has a really good year this upcoming season and Caleb, kicks ass and dominates in AA and gets to AAA and he's hitting well, I would not be surprised if the Yankees gave him a chance to win that job. That's my hot take right now. Maybe you have a different thought process about that, but what are you thinking in terms of the future at second base? Because the Yankees do have to make that decision with Gleyber Torres in the final year of arbitration.
Yeah, so another guy that is on the 40-man roster and therefore does not have to be a non-roster invite is Jorbit Vivas, who they acquired in that deal with the Dodgers, in which they also got Victor Gonzalez, sent off Trey Sweeney in that deal. Vivas is another like contact overpower kind of guy. But I think he's also left-handed, which I think will give him an advantage in any conversations, because he can pull the ball in the air, and that certainly plays at Yankee Stadium. But when it pertains to Caleb Durbin, I would 100% agree. I think there's a real chance that in a year from now, we're talking about him competing for a starting job. Now, there are situations in which prospects pop and just have a really good year at a minor league level, and they kind of fizzle out, or they aren't players that the organization values heavily. And we're not sitting here and saying Caleb Durbin should be on your top 100 list or whatever. But what we are saying is that he took a meteoric rise, and we've seen prospects at times, they put up good numbers, they get overlooked in that year that put up good numbers, and they do it again the year after, and suddenly everybody's on board. The quality of contact metrics, we don't have public StatCast data in terms of hard hit numbers or whatever it may be, but what we do have is data in AA that shows that he had a 41.5% fly ball rate. That appeals to me a lot, because that's by far the highest mark of his career. And he had a 4.6% strikeout rate, as you pointed out. He cut his strikeout rate in half. He hit the ball in the air more and cut his strikeout rate in half. That's unbelievable, right? Like, that shouldn't happen. When we talked with Caleb Durbin, he said, in the Arizona Fall League, it was the same thing. He was trying to lift the ball in the air more. And what did he do? In the AFL, strike out like 5% of the time. I mean, Alex, how many times do you see a guy try to get more loft in your swing, which means getting underneath the ball more, which means opening yourself up for swings and misses more, and then they strike out less, and they produce a ton. This guy was unbelievable in the Fall League and unbelievable in AA, and he was battling injuries, and he had lower body stuff. And also, did we mention the fact that he stole like 35 bases in like 60-something games? No, not 35, excuse me. He stole 36 bases in 69 games played. That's unbelievable. That's like a 70 stolen base pace if you play like 130 games or something like that. You factor in the Fall League where it's like 20 bases in like 30 games as well. This guy's a stolen base threat. Look, I don't know if he's going to be a starting caliber second baseman. We don't know that. What we know is that he's versatile. He's a natural shortstop, so he can play shortstop, and he's played at the minor league level. He's learned how to play third this year. He's adequate at second. Not adequate. He's pretty good at second base. A very athletic fielder. Might learn how to play the outfield. Can steal a bunch of bases, and has an unbelievable hit tool. That is a great package to have in a player, and there's a diversification in player type when you add a player like that to the Yankees roster. I'm not saying, like, I'm not one of these, the Yankees are going to strike out a million times and they suck type of people. I personally think that strikeouts are oftentimes just a byproduct of a hitter who's chasing power, and in most cases, the hitter should be chasing power. But having a guy who's just completely different from everything the Yankees have is kind of nice, right? Like, Caleb Durbin is completely different from every other prospect in the organization, every other player at the major league level, and his strikeout rate is unique to everybody. I mean, look at what Zips projects him to be this year, knowing that he hasn't played above AA. They project him for a 92 WRC plus, a 1.2 WAR in 88 games, which that isn't stellar, but that's a solid utility player, and a 9.5% strikeout rate. That's the thing that stands out to me, Alex. They're projecting this guy to be a sub 10% strikeout guy. They project this guy to be one of the best contact bat-to-ball guys in all of baseball, and he hasn't even played above AAA. He has 47 games of AA experience. He doesn't even have that much minor league experience. He played at a D3 school. He hasn't faced this top caliber competition for very long, and he's adjusted quickly. We noticed that trend with Ben Rice. We talked about, look, he played in circuits where he wasn't playing guys who were going to get drafted or were going to get drafted with top picks. Durbin was in a similar situation. Perhaps these are guys, and perhaps Durbin's a guy who, in his age 24 season, with a lot more experience, in a second year with the organization, clicks. And if he clicks, I mean, the infield depth is truly spectacular. And yeah, it does place a lot less pressure on the organization to have to sign Gleyber Torres at the end of the year.
Yeah, I mean, definitely give us a little bit of at least alternatives in terms of what Caleb Durbin could end up being. But let's take a look at the pitchers really quickly with Will Warren and Chase Hampton. These are two guys that really could be something. You know, Will Warren, we've just recently talked to, and Will Warren is a really good freaking player, and he is really starting to come into his own, learning how to attack left-handed batters, and start to quell some of the concerns that people had about him. And, you know, his stuff against right-handed batters is straight up elite. He's like, if I am up against a right-handed batter, I know I got him. Like, that's how confident he is. We know that's a really good part of his game. His numbers looked elevated on paper because of the left-handed batters kind of beating him up a little bit, but he started to introduce a cutter, some more pitches, and starting to round his entire pitch mix up. That's starting to kind of give him that advantage. And then on the other side of that equation is Chase Hampton, who is arguably the Yankees' #1 pitching prospect. And Chase Hampton, my friends, has elite-level stuff as well. If you look at his numbers on paper, it doesn't tell the full story. In AA, started to go away from his fastball to try and develop some of his other pitches, slider, whatnot. And if you ask the pitching development coaches for the Yankees, they will tell you his fastball is his best pitch, and he didn't use it a lot in AA, but they're going to start getting that more involved, right? They're going to start adding his fastball back. Averages about 94 miles an hour, insane movement. The dude's got it all. He has got the stuff to be a top-flight starter in the MLB. The Yankees have not developed a top-flight starter since Luis Severino when he was in his prime. We need more of that. I think Chase Hampton has that upside. He's a little bit young. He's younger. I think he's 22 years old, so he's primed to make that jump soon. We're going to get a first look at what he can do in spring training, which will be very, very exciting. Ryan, what are your hopes for these two players? These two guys could be legitimate impact players for the Yankees, not just in 2024, but over the next 5-6 seasons. These guys, there's a reason the Yankees held on to them. There's a reason they decided we're going to give away Drew Thorpe and not Chase Hampton, or, you know, vice versa, whatever it might have been. We love Drew Thorpe. We thought he was phenomenal, but you said this months ago, it was a close call. Like, you could make the argument that Chase Hampton was a better prospect than Drew Thorpe. And I think that fastball, with how nasty it is in the pitch, you know, sequence and the mix that both Warren and Hampton have, it's truly special.
Yeah, so I just want to clarify when it comes to, like, analyzing pitching prospects and stuff like that. Obviously, Drew Thorpe is really good. There's a reason why the Padres like Drew Thorpe. There's a reason we were talking about Drew Thorpe plenty, especially towards the end of the season. But Chase Hampton has a distinct advantage here, and it's just having pitches that translate better to the major league level. Typically, changeup first pitchers are subject to a lot more variance. They really dominate at the minor league level, but that doesn't always translate to the major league level. If you think about changeup first starters, the major league level, like, how many are there, right? I'm not saying that to say that Drew Thorpe's going to stink. Maybe Drew Thorpe is a unique case here in an outlier situation. He certainly has an outlier changeup, but we see that the window of life for these kind of changeup first guys, the consistency is up and down. Like Lucas Giolito, for example, some years he's elite, and then in recent years he's been not so good, right? Another guy would be like a Tyler Anderson. Really good with the Dodgers, signs with the Angels, immediately bombs in year one, right? So, there is some sustainability issues with change-up first pitchers. But that's not to demean Drew Thorpe. That's just nitpicking here. If you want to nitpick for Chase Hampton, you'd say, hey, how repeatable are the mechanics? How is he going to be able to build up his workload? The velocity, like is his fastball velocity good enough to get past major league hitters? All that stuff. But his fastball really is good. Like it gets about 19 inches of vertical ride. Gets a lot of carry. He releases it from a slightly lower slot than most pitchers, so it's a little bit deceptive. The cutter is really good. The sweeper is really good. The curveball is really good. He has a good feel of these pitches. These are breaking pitches that are going to play to righties and lefties. And end of the day, it's the increase in strike throwing abilities. He was one of the best minor league pitchers in terms of just throwing strikes, and that was a problem for him in college. So we're talking about, the ability to progress and get better, and as you get better and keep going forward and stuff like that, he's going to pitch deep into games. He's not going to walk a billion guys and dig himself into a hole. He's got the stuff to blow by hitters. There's a reason he had a 33.1% strikeout rate. And his stuff is good. Like, this is his first year at the professional level. In year one, he accomplished a ton. So, we'll see how year two looks like. The Yankees love him for a reason. And the Yankees usually have a pretty good eye as to which guys are good or not in their organization. They won't play the guys who they don't think are very good. They will play the guys who they think will become pretty good players. So I think it's really telling that they've hung on to him and they've clung on to him, really. Like they have not been just throwing him around in deals. And the other guy, Will Warren, Will Warren has spent his entire minor league career, in my opinion, just being vastly underrated. And this feels like the first pocket of time in which people are going to start appreciating him because he's right there. He's about to become a major league pitcher. It's going to happen very quickly, right? Like, it's going to happen soon. We imagine it happens this year, barring, any injury situation. I think we're kind of just assuming somebody's going to get hurt because it just happens. Like, I'm not like a pessimistic guy, but I mean, look at the rotation. Will Warren's going to get looks this year. He's got great stuff. The sinker, the sweeper, excellent. Everything is just really good there. Ground balls will prevent damage contact. Will he be like a 30% strikeout guy? No, I think it'll be closer to around 25%, in his best years. And that's fine. I think 25% strikeout rate, 50% ground ball rate, keep the walk rate around 7 to 8%. That's a pretty good pitcher. That's around a 17% strikeout to walk rate and a 50% ground ball rate. If you look at the list of pitchers who hit those qualifiers, those are really good pitchers, right? Not everybody's going to be a Cy Young winner. And I need to say that when we talk about Chase Hampton, Will Warren, because if the expectations for prospects are these guys have to go out and finish top 3 in the Cy Young voting, you are placing too high of an expectation on these guys. It's very rare you find a Cy Young contender, right? We talk about Luis Severino. There was a point in time where he looked like he'd be a Hall of Famer. We couldn't foresee the Tommy John stuff. That happens, right? Like, guys get hurt. If Chase Hampton needs Tommy John surgery in May, we can't foresee this, and that just happens. And nowadays, everybody gets hurt, and everybody gets Tommy John, and everybody's got shoulder issues or whatever it may be, because everybody's throwing a lot harder. So I just need people to understand, we're high on these guys. We're optimistic they can contribute, and this applies to the position players as well. But it all comes with an asterisk of we don't know, right? Like, we don't know what their injury future looks like. Did anyone think Luis Severino would be an injury-prone starter when he's making 30 starts a year, pitching deep into games and throwing 99 miles an hour? Absolutely not. It just happened, right? One day it just happened. And maybe that happens to these guys, but I'm optimistic that they have the stuff and the upside to become really quality pitchers. And looking at this pitching staff, Alex, they're certainly going to need one of these guys to step up. And I'll lean more towards Warren because he's more experienced, but I'm really excited to see what these two can contribute to the team next year or in 2025.
Yeah, and that's really what the Yankees are banking on too, because there's a reason they kept a hold of them. There's a reason that they're starting to incorporate them. They're inviting them to spring training. There are high hopes for these guys. So, hope you guys enjoyed this first episode of the Baby Bombers podcast talking about the prospects. There's a lot more to come. We got you guys covered on multiple fronts, multiple angles. We're going to get as many interviews as we can. High quality content right here on the YouTube channel. If you enjoyed the episode, please make sure to like and subscribe. As always, my friends, much appreciated. And we'll catch you guys on the next one.